All right, so we have water baptism coming up June the 16th. And if you haven't heard us talk about before, we're big here at King Street. We're big on next steps. And water baptism is one of those important next steps that all of us, if we haven't done that, should take. And all we're doing is just responding to the call of Jesus and the example that he set, as we heard about a couple of weeks ago, just being baptized himself. And we just follow his steps, don't we, as we follow Jesus. And it's so important. So if you want more information, go to the website, find that water baptism is an event, click on there, and then place to register there as well. And we'd love to have you part of that on June 16th, and we'll be honored to baptize you. So we're going to continue the series, as Pastor Dave mentioned, marked by the gospel. And today we're going to take a look at Mark chapter 1, verse 21 through 39. And today we're going to talk about responding to the call, as Pastor Dave mentioned a little bit earlier. Over the last couple of weeks, Pastor Dave has talked about this call to a lifestyle of repentance. And then he talked about a call to a lifestyle of purpose. And it's a call to each of us to respond and live this lifestyle out. And the truth is, all of us must, in some way, respond to that call to live that way, to follow the steps of Jesus. And this is an important thing to keep in mind, especially as we're going to read the passage to ponder in just a moment. But that call to follow Jesus is so important to me because it's a part of my story. I can remember, I think it was July 1986, I was 16 years old. I grew up in church, knew all about everything that sort of happens, and slipped under the radar to just live enough of a good life that everybody would have thought I had it all together. And yet I wasn't following Jesus at the time. And I went to a youth meeting. And I don't remember what even was talked about, but at some point in the gathering, there was this opportunity to respond to the call. And I felt this impression as if it was God saying to me, Al, are you going to respond to me? Are you going to continue to live your life to please yourself or to please other people? Or are you going to respond to me and live your life to please me? And for those moments that I was there and sensing God saying that to me, and I can't describe it other than I just felt that. I knew that it was God saying it, and I resisted it. And I said no to it. And I remember feeling this sense, if you ever felt an overwhelming sense of conviction, then you know what I'm talking about. It sat on me for like probably an hour after, where I just like, you need to respond, and I resisted and I said no to it. And I spent a whole year, it was my last year of high school, and I just sort of went through the motions of everything I had done before. Come to July 1986, almost to the day, I was back at the same camp, and I remember sitting in a service again. I don't remember what they talked about, but I remember God coming back and saying the same thing to me again. And this time I said yes. And that responding to the call, I'm overwhelmed at times to think that God waited for me all of that time, a whole year, to give me another opportunity to respond to his call to follow him and to finally say yes to him. I'm overwhelmed to think about how the Spirit pursued me in all of that time. Circumstances happened in my life that brought me to that place where I was ready to say yes to Jesus. Like I said, it fits well with our passage to ponder today. And so if you're able to, would you stand with me and let's read this together. Read it so the people beside you can hear you because they like your voice. Then he called the crowd to him along with his disciples and said, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me and for the gospel will save it. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? If anyone is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will be ashamed of them when he comes into his Father's glory with the holy angels." Well done. You can go ahead and find your seat. As we've been learning, Mark's account is the account of the gospel or the good news about Jesus. And so far, we've learned how Jesus' coming was announced, and Jesus begins to prepare and start for his mission, his ministry. And so he's baptized, he's empowered by the Spirit, he's tested. Remember, he goes into the desert to be tempted by the enemy. Then he announces his mission, and he rallies his followers together. And everything is in place as we begin today to take a look at this passage for the gospel or the good news to begin to go out. And so with that in mind, let's turn to our passage today from Mark chapter 1. I'll start reading at verse 21. It says, Jesus and his companions went to the town of Capernaum. When the Sabbath day came, keep that in mind, he went into the synagogue and began to teach. The people were amazed at his teaching, for he taught with real authority. And Mark makes this note, quite unlike the teachers of religious law. Suddenly, a man in the synagogue who was possessed by an evil spirit cried out, "Why are you interfering with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." But Jesus reprimanded him. "Be quiet. Come out of the man," he ordered. And at that, the evil spirit screamed, threw the man into a convulsion, and then came out of him. Now, wouldn't that make that exciting if that happened today in church? Can you imagine? Some of you would be like, "I'm not going back to that church. That was freaky." Amazement gripped the audience. They began to discuss what had happened. "What sort of new teaching is this?" they asked excitedly. "It has such authority. Even evil spirits obey his orders." The news about Jesus spread quickly throughout the entire region of Galilee. As Jesus left the synagogue with James and John and then went to Simon and Andrew's home. Now, Simon's mother-in-law was sick in bed with a high fever. They told Jesus about her right away. I don't know what Peter's relationship was like with his mother-in-law, but obviously he liked her, which is great. I love my mother-in-law too. If she's watching today, hi, Lorna. They told him about her. So Jesus went to her bedside, took her by the hand, and helped her sit up. Then the fever left her, and she prepared a meal for them. That evening, after sunset, and take note of this, remember it was the Sabbath, so Sabbath ends at sunset. That evening, after sunset, many sick and demon-possessed people were brought to Jesus. The whole town gathered at the door to watch. So Jesus healed many people who were sick with various diseases, and he cast out many demons. But because the demons knew who he was, he did not allow them to speak. Before daybreak the next morning, Jesus got up and went out to an isolated place to pray. Later, Simon and the others went out to find him, and when they found him, they said, "Jesus, everyone is looking for you." But Jesus replied, "We must go on to other towns as well, and I will preach to them too, for that is why I came." So he traveled throughout the region of Galilee, preaching in the synagogues and casting out demons. From these verses that we've just read, and there's quite a few there, so thank you for your patience as we read those today, we discover, I think, two responses to the call to follow Jesus. The first group I call the unchanged. Mark mentions briefly the teachers of the religious law. We don't meet any of them or hear much about them, other than that the people say that they were quite surprised by Jesus' teaching because it was so more authoritative than the religious people of the religious law. They're only referenced in this story, but we'll learn more about them later as we travel through the book of Mark, that they literally become the opponents of Jesus. These were the religious who knew God's truth. They had the knowledge of God's truth. They understood the scriptures. They taught the Old Testament, the Torah, to the people. People would come to them for answers. They knew it. But their response, as we'll see in weeks to come, was to reject Jesus. Then there's the crowds in Capernaum. Mark describes that they were amazed at the teaching and the authority. They were amazed at the miracles. They wanted more of the show. Jesus, come and do more. Do more miracles. Cast more demons out. Do all these fantastic things here in Capernaum. But sadly, they remained spectators. One of the verses says they stood at the door watching as Jesus set these people free. If you read in the book of John in chapter 1 verse 12 and in chapter 12 verse 42, we actually read where John talks about how the people of Capernaum heard and saw what Jesus did and said, and yet they refused to believe. These were the crowds who experienced Jesus, yet they still rejected him. And then there's the evil spirits. I'm not trying to do a teaching on demonology here today, but just some interesting things that you reread in these verses. They knew who Jesus was, and their response to him was an attempt to grandstand. And let me explain that. See, the enemy lots of times uses deception and control and manipulation to try to convince us that he's more powerful, that he can do greater things than he really can, and tries to usurp what God is doing. If you're around for very long, you notice a lot of times that the enemy takes what God has made, what is made good, and twists it to be used for evil. Manipulates, lies. If I did a poll today and I said, how many people have been lied to by the enemy? I think all of us would put our hand up. We've bought into these things so easily, and the enemy does that. And here in this situation, the demons try to draw so much attention to Jesus, to disrupt his mission, to try to get it out there. If you notice, if you'll read through the Gospels, Jesus reveals that he is the Messiah to very few people, to get to that place where he would accomplish his mission. Because he knew that if the people thought he was the Messiah, they would try to usurp the Romans and put Jesus in place as their political king. But that's not why he came. And so they tried to do all of these things, and Jesus puts them in their place, these demons. Because Jesus came to put an end to the rule of evil and Satan work, as we'll see in a few moments, and what he does for someone. These were the evil spirits that Jesus encountered, but in spite of knowing who Jesus was, they refused in any way allegiance to him. And there's a whole other teaching I won't even get into. This group of the unchanged could hear the call, but were unwilling to have a heart that is changed towards Jesus. They simply said no. Let's be honest today. It's easy for us to come to church. It's easy for us to live in tradition, to relish in our past experiences and many different testimonies or stories that we could share of what God has done for us. But it's easy, just as easy for us to neglect to allow the gospel or the good news about Jesus to continue to change us. It's as simple as we stop reflecting. We stop evaluating our lives by the scriptures. We stop asking God to search our hearts. And in some way, there's a bit of pride in us that somehow we've attained or got there, or we're a little bit farther along. And I don't know about you, but the longer you follow Jesus, the more you realize how far you have to go. Am I the only one? No, I don't think so. There's so much to go. But it's so easy for us to settle, to justify our actions. Even when someone questions or challenges us, we are quick to refute or say, no, that's not my intention, or no, I can live that way, or I've made that decision, or I'm okay, to be in that situation. I can handle it. I can resist the temptation. Instead of checking ourselves. And sadly, sometimes we even surround ourselves with people who tell us what we want to hear or stroke our ego, instead of people who say, maybe you should look at that situation a little bit different and think about it. And our pride, sadly, becomes a smokescreen to the true condition of our heart. And I wonder sometimes when we read those verses that say that some came and said they knew Jesus. I did all of these things for you, Lord. And his response is, I don't even know you. You don't just wake up one day and suddenly be far away from God or in a place that you never planned on going. It's a slow process of saying no to Jesus. Now, with no condemnation today, because let's be honest, we've all been in that place. So we all need to ask ourselves, myself included, how am I responding to his call today? Am I still being changed by the gospel message? Am I still keeping a soft heart or keeping open to what he's saying to me and being willing to respond to that, to do what he wants? Is Jesus still leaving a mark on my life? Then there's another group of people. I call them the changed group. There's this Jewish man who's controlled by satanic forces who's sitting in the synagogue. Now, this is interesting because if the Jewish people, especially religious leaders, knew that this man was sitting in the synagogue who was possessed by an evil spirit, they would have threw him out a long time ago, right? There's no place for Satan in the church. I don't know how long he was there. I don't know whether this man who had a demon controlling him came to the church searching for God, or if he was influenced in some way, had reasons for being there, that the enemy was controlling him. We don't know any of those things, but it's interesting that he's sitting there and nothing happens to him until he's confronted by Jesus. Either way, Jesus sets him free. And his life was changed forever. Now, if we all were honest today, we all have our demons. Now, we're not all demon-possessed or oppressed by demons, but we have these things in our lives that we struggle with the most. And we call them that as a reference point. We struggle. Those are those things that every once in a while pop out, and we're like, where did that come from? I'm still struggling with that. Or other things that we give into that we're wrestling through. Some are habits and sins that we struggle with each day. Others control us completely. And Jesus' message to you and I today, if we're in that position, is Jesus has come to bring you freedom. You don't have to stay the same. And he's not asking you to get your life right to a certain standard. He is saying, just admit those things and let me help you. Let me set you free, because the truth is, only he can do it. Only he can break the power of the enemy. Then there's Simon's mother-in-law. She's sick in bed when Jesus arrives, and we only meet this woman once in Scripture, but Jesus took the time to sit at her bedside and to heal her. And her response afterwards was to get up and to serve. It's almost like as soon as she's well, and if you've watched The Chosen, there's the scene of this happening in there, and it's fantastic. When Jesus heals her, she comes to herself, the fever breaks, and she's like, "Why are you all staring at me?" And she gets up and makes coffee and tea or whatever they had, refreshments for everybody, because she's so thankful. She's so humble that she serves. She's a model for discipleship here. That when Jesus heals her and makes her whole, her response is a heart full of gratefulness and humility to serve. That the Master came to my house, that he sat with me, that he made me whole. My response, I'll do all things the rest of my life to serve and to help others because of what he's done for me. And the truth is today, we all have our issues, don't we? Some of them are physical, emotional, relational, psychological, spiritual. And I think Jesus' message to us today is that he has chosen to go out of his way to be present with you and I and to walk with us on a path to wholeness. He wants us to be whole. And however long it's going to take, he will walk with us because he wants to heal us, make us into who he created us to be. He's chosen to help to change us so that our lives change for the better, that we can become the best version of ourselves. And let me tell you today, even if you can't see it yourself, he's already changing you just by your willingness to say, "Yes, Jesus, I have my issues. Don't give up on me, Lord. Help me today." Then we meet those who were in that area who were desperate. These were the many sick and the demon-possessed who were brought to Jesus. And because they, though themselves as well as those who brought them, were desperate, they were hoping to see Jesus. Now, they didn't bring them to Jesus on the Sabbath because of the Jewish laws that said you just weren't to do that. And so they waited until the Sabbath was over. And as soon as it was over, they brought their sick and the people that they knew that were demon-possessed to Jesus. And it says that Jesus took the time to heal them and to set them free and to help them. We've all experienced moments of desperation where we've had situations that we cried out to God, or just, "God, even if there is a God, help me here in this situation. I don't know what to do. My hands are tied," or "This is an impossible situation. I don't know what's going to come out of this." And we're so overwhelmed and we're desperate. And the message from these verses that we're reading here today is that whatever the situation or whatever the circumstances that we find ourselves in that we can't change, that Jesus waits for us. In the same way that Jesus stayed in Capernaum until the Sabbath was over so that the people could get to him, he waits for us to turn to him. To just say, "God, I need you." One of the beautiful things about the character of God is that he doesn't wait for us to beg. He doesn't stand there with his back to us when we go, "God, will you help me?" Say it again. "God, please, will you help me in this situation?" Keep begging. "God, please help me in this situation." "Oh, okay, you're bothering me now." God in his character, that when we turn towards him and say, "God, I need your help," he turns to us and he meets us where we are with a desire to help us in our lives, as we've talked about, to bring freedom. He doesn't take off on us. Now, he doesn't always promise his power to deliver us from the situation, because sometimes, as you know, things happen, and even when we call out to God, things get worse, and we're like, God, what are you doing? I called out to you for help, and it's getting worse now. He doesn't always just deliver us, because he has a plan he's working. And it's not an evil plan from what some of you might think. It's a good plan that he's using to turn us towards him and to turn us into the best version of ourselves. But sometimes he does. Sometimes in a moment, he uses his power to free us and to heal us and to empower us. But what he always does is make his presence with us. If you and I call out to God, God is always present to walk with us through whatever we face. And this does not depend on our feelings. It doesn't depend on us thinking, oh God, where are you, God? God, where are you? You feel so distant, so far away. Where are you? And he's right here. He's right with us. And he's walking with us. And I think sometimes if he, in those moments when we feel that way, that he would love to be able to just give us a sense of him slipping his hand into ours to remind us, I'm here. I'm here. The other unchanged people we meet here are the followers of Jesus. The changed people, sorry. Simon, Peter, Andrew, James, and John found Jesus off praying by himself. After all of these things he's been doing, been so busy helping, doing his ministry, you'd think he would stay in Capernaum when he's got a crowd of people amazed, and he's got a whole following of people who are excited and passionate because they're healed and delivered, that great things are happening here, and they go looking for Jesus. They thought he should have been busy, healing people more, showcasing himself. And they find him off praying. And Jesus here takes this opportunity to remind them of his mission, but also what would be their mission. That there are still others who need to hear. There's still more people that need to hear the good news, that need to experience the good news in their lives. Peter, James, John, we can't stay here in Capernaum. There are more people that still need to be impacted. And so he reminded them their task was not to stay, their task was to go as followers of Jesus. And the message to us is that we have to keep, if we're followers of Jesus, we have to keep loving, going, serving, and following him. Keep walking in his footsteps. And what I like about this group of the changed people is that with their imperfect lives, they heard the call and they simply said yes, not even knowing completely what that meant. But Jesus had a plan. And the choice to respond to Jesus' call is a decision that we all have to make. In fact, it's a daily decision. And it requires a conscious decision to say yes every day. So to sort of wrap things up here today, I want to answer the question, what does it mean to say yes to Jesus daily? I like to use a little bit of visuals, so I thought this might help today. If it doesn't help, then just ignore. If you're watching the video, shut it off if it doesn't make any sense. The first part of following Jesus is saturation. Saying yes to Jesus. Now, if you have tea, you pour your hot water, and when you put your tea bag in, you don't just put it in a little bit, right? You don't just sort of dip it and go, oh, that's nice, that'll be good, that's good enough, right? Some of you like your tea really weak, but when you make your tea, what do? You put the whole bag in, right? And you get the whole bag wet. And I should have picked a better tea bag because it doesn't want to get, there we go. Okay, good tea bag. There you go. You're doing better now. You get the whole tea bag wet, right? And you saturate it. And as you saturate it, it begins to come out, and a beautiful tea is made out of it. Saturation in saying yes to Jesus is where we allow him to permeate every part of our lives. Not just the parts that we bring to the table on Sunday. Not just one day a week, not just, okay, Jesus, you can sort of, look after, you can be a part in my, my spiritual life. And, my kids are driving me crazy. I need your help in my family life here. I'm struggling in my marriage. Yeah, okay, I'll let you get into my marriage a little bit there. When we saturate our lives in saying yes to Jesus, he goes into every part of it. When we do that, he begins to challenge our thoughts, our attitudes, not just at home, but at work. When you're driving your car, I know, nobody likes to hear that. Everywhere you go, he begins to permeate into that. And if we're saying yes to Jesus every day, those things begin to change. Those things begin to become, you begin to be shaped into who God made you to be. And there's something beautiful that happens. And it's a struggle because it's saying yes every day. But when we say yes to it, I think sometimes it's the difference between sort of having a drink of water. My throat is parched. I got a little bit of allergies going on. To having a drink of tea. Right? That is so good for my throat right now. There's something about it when we allow Christ to saturate our lives, when we say yes to him every day. The other part of saying yes to Jesus is surrender. I couldn't get a steering wheel today, so I found the best one I could get. I had to take the batteries out of it because I was pushing the buttons and it wouldn't stop talking. And okay, turn right, turn left, right? Become the best pup you can as a rescue driver. Surrender is letting Christ control the direction of our lives. Of letting him take the wheel, as we've heard before. It's not just a slogan. It's not just when we're desperate to go, all right, Jesus, take the wheel because, I'm in the ditch. I need your help to get out of here. Or I'm on the wrong path again. My wife told me the way to go, but I didn't follow her because I'm not stopping for directions. And we're trying to control our lives. And when things are out of control, we say, okay, you take the wheel. No. Saying yes to Jesus daily is saying, okay, you drive today. You drive the direction for my life. Who are the people that you're crossing my path with today? That you want me to be your light and your salt to some way influence today? Who are the people in your family? Jesus, how do you want me to love them? In fact, God, help me to love them at times. But you are in control. And let's be honest today, when we wake up every morning, don't we grab the handlebars, right? Don't we grab the steering wheel? We go, okay, let's go. Okay, get in the car. We got to get going. Here we go. Okay, everybody, did you bring your lunch? No, come on. What's wrong with you, right? And before long, we're like, yeah, going. We're white-knuckling it, right? And then Jesus we have this little tap on our shoulder. Go, who's driving? Oh, yeah. Gosh, okay. There you go. It's a daily decision to say yes to Jesus. Surrender to him. And finally, it requires action. Remember, Jesus says to his disciples, we can't stay here. Yeah, this is great. There's lots of good things going on, but we can't stay here. We've got to keep going. We have a mission to fulfill. There's something more to do. And Jesus, he goes, okay, here's your boots. Put them on. Let's go, okay? Get your slippers off. We can't get comfortable here. There's more to be done. I don't even know. I found these in Sonia's office, so I don't even know whose these are. Are they not hers? So if they're yours, you can come and claim them after. Right? I don't think they fit me, so I'm not going to wear them. But he says, come on. Let's go. Let's go. There's more to be done. He goes, Jesus, I'm not sure. He goes, just put your shoes on and just follow in my footsteps. And just keep walking. Because, Al, it's not about you. It's about me. And my Spirit, I've promised, is in you and will be with you and will empower you to do what I'm asking you to do. You are not on your own, but come on, get off the couch and put your shoes on. He asks us for action. Saying yes to him every day sounds like a lot of work. But in light of what God has in store for us, in light of what he's done for us, is it really that tough? He just simply says, come on, let's go. Follow me. Follow me. Let's pray. Father, we thank you today for your amazing love for us. Jesus, we thank you for the example that you set for us, that you continue to call us to follow you. And we thank you for your Spirit that gives us all that we need to become who you have already declared us to be if we're followers of you, but is not finished. You're working on us moment by moment. Would you help us, God, to be the people in the changed group that are willing, Lord, to simply say, yes, this is going to be a lot of work. This is going to be hard, what you're asking me to do. But Jesus, help me. I say yes today. Would you help us, Lord, to be yes people? Every day when we wake up, when you ask us, when we're reminded of your presence with us, that we would simply say, yes, go into every part of my life, take the wheel. I'm going to get my shoes on and I'm going to go and do what you want. And we thank you, Lord. Lord, for others here today who are not sure about saying yes to you yet, I pray that you would speak to them. They would hear your voice, that they would sense your love extending to them and saying, come, follow me. You may not know what's all in store, but trust me. Trust me. Because whatever you face, I'm going to be with you. I'm going to help you. I'm going to walk with you. And I'm going to take you to be on a path to become the best version of yourself and who I created you to become. And Lord, may we be reminded today of your redemption power to take all of our past, all of our history, all of our demons and issues and mistakes and struggles, things that we wrestle with, and you're redeeming those things to be used for your purposes in a beautiful way to become something greater than we ever thought imagined. And so we thank you for this today. Move in our hearts and move us to change so that we say yes to you. In your name.